Hi folks, welcome to another edition of My Life with Robert Burns podcast. I'm here with my friend and colleague from Newcombe Burns Club, Jim Thompson. Hi Jim.
Hi Douglas, hi everybody.
Hi.
Hi Jim.
We've got another first for you today. We're having our first couples podcast, so that's something new for us. So cronies everywhere, please welcome two former presidents of Prestwick Burns Club, Tom and Isobel McCrorie.
Hi.
Hello there everybody, nice to be here.
Yeah, nice. I wish I could see everybody, but that isn't the case, so it is nice to be here.
So, hi Tom and Isobel. So, how are you doing today? How's life in Prestwick?
Oh, we've had the usual marital blissful breakup in the morning.
Marital strife.
Yeah.
Over towels in the bathroom.
Yeah, that's
Too many.
tidy it up.
Well, that's another first. The first one that starts with marital strife. Anyway, tell us a bit about the good points of your long marriage, and tell us a little bit about yourselves, if you don't mind.
Right, darling, do you want to go first? Because you've got more to say than I have.
Well, I don't think that's always the case, but I could start if you like. Okay. I'm a Kilmarnock lass, and I met Tom and Aya at the dancing. What would you believe? But I guess lots of people meet their husbands at the dancing in these days. Not now though. And I met him at the pavilion, but we didn't call it the pavilion. We called it the Piv. And I had been at Kilmarnock Academy, and I was still at Kilmarnock Academy. I was a student at the time, and he recognised me and asked me to dance, and then said, can I drive you home? And had keys in his pocket. And I thought, well, that would be quite good. I wouldn't have to get the bus. So I said yes. Then I discovered the keys weren't his. They belonged to his pal. And not only that, but his pal's car broke down on the way. And Tom and I...
It actually broke down before we actually get into it.
And Tom and I had to push the car. So I didn't realise. So how romantic was that? The first time you meet somebody, you end up
pushing their car.
A memorable first date.
Then he said, can we go out the next night? And I said, yes. And so he arrived in his dad's big swanky car, and I rushed out to see him thinking I was looking really lovely. And he said to me, go and get your swimming suit because we're going swimming. Right? That was different. So I went and got my swimming suit, and we did go swimming to Brassy Beach. And that's it, really, in a nutshell. And it's been a lot of fun, and it's been fun ever since. And we've done lots of interesting things together. So after, I'll tell you a wee bit about myself.
Now, before that, I have to mention it was a white bikini, so I was really interested.
After, I'll tell you a wee bit about myself. I was born in Kilmarnock, as I said, and just to an ordinary working family, I suppose you would call us. But it was an interesting family in that it was an extended family. My granny lived with us, and she was a great piano player. We had a big piano in the house, and she was a great piano player, and that was really the highlight of my day, listening to my granny singing and playing the piano. And all my brothers and sisters, I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters, all older than me. The brother youngest, nearest me, was 13 years older than me. And they were all musical, apart from one, my brother Andrew, who wasn't a musical, but he was funny, so that was fine. And then when I was 3 years of age, my mother and father adopted 3 girls. a whole family of 3 girls. So it was a huge family. And when we got together and there was a big gathering, there was lots of music. My sister played the accordion and the piano and the organ, and my uncle played the accordion and the organ and the piano, and it was like a band. And when Tom appeared, he fitted right into the family band because he played the guitar, and that's what we didn't have. So he was right in there, and it was completely different for him because he was an only one, and all of a sudden he was in this huge family.
And my family weren't into music. I was brought up in New Mills, up the valley, the 3 towns, Golson, New Mills and Darville. I was brought up in New Mills. And at the age of 14, I spent the whole summer on a farm, the New Intax it was called. I tell you, that was hard work. But I used the money I saved up working on the farm to buy myself my first guitar. It was a kind of rubbish guitar because you didn't get much money working on a farm, and but also bought a book, Teach Yourself to Play in a Day by Bert Whedon. Well, he was wrong because I'm still learning yet.
There'll be a few folk had that book in the house.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, my son-in-law, funnily enough, bought me it for my Christmas two Christmases ago. This book, I says, I've lived with it all my life.
I wonder what he was trying to tell you.
No, well, you can take that out of it as well, because he's a better guitar player than I am.
Anyway, when I met Tom, before that I had been singing in folk clubs and all sorts of things with a few different bands. But when I met Tom, and he was quite, I would have said, a decent guitar player, a good guitar player. And we kind of hit the club scene and we were resident band for the Covenanters in New Mills, and just ourselves and also with another person. And we had a weird name, which was the Valians, and that was a kind of weird name. Remember the Valians?
We pronounced it the Valians.
We did. But it didn't work.
No. Yeah, we had various gigs at the Covenanters and played alongside people like Barbara Dixon, Archie Fisher, Hamish Imlach, Alistair MacDonald, you name it, all the top names in the folk scene back then. We had to start off the night, and then they come in for their big deal after us. We
were the warm-up group.
We were the warm-up. We actually, not deliberately, but at the Irvine Fest, we were there one year, and we happened to be the warm-up act for My Hero. It was the Humble Bums that come in after us.
Aye.
So it was Jerry Rafferty and Rob Noakes and Billy Connolly that came in after us. So I remember that one.
Tremendous. So was that when you were both still at school, or was that when you were slightly older?
Well, I was still at school. And then, of course, I became a student because I went to Craigie College, and then a teacher, a primary teacher. Tom was working at the time.
I left, went to Kilmarnock Academy and for my sins, and my uncle was a physics teacher at Kilmarnock Academy, so I passed my physics exam. But I just wasn't into studying back then. I was more into cars and badminton and canoeing and youth club and girls, of course. And going to see gigs like the Birds in Bournemouth with somebody called Douglas Mackenzie.
That's a lot of years ago.
I know, I'm awful sorry because I found this photograph of you up in the morning with bare feet cooking bacon and the wee camp stove outside the tent. You've got a full head of hair, mate.
Aye. It didn't last very long. So tell the folks what you did after school, Tom, then.
Well, after Kilmarnock Academy, I was offered a place at Glasgow University, but my heart wasn't in it. And my father said to me, I could get you a job in Johnny Walker's because I know the manager of the cooperage and he could put in a word for you. I says, oh well, I says, I'll take that, because I really hadn't any notion of going on to tertiary education at that stage. So I joined Johnny Walker's, as you well know, the year before you joined.
That's right.
And after a couple of years, Walkers had decided to computerise a lot of their accounting and stuff like that, which was done, I believe, in NCR machines, was it, Douglas? I think it was NCR.
I think it was initially.
Yeah. So they had this aptitude test, and 3 of us come out of it looking good, yourself, myself, and Walter Crosby. And for my sins, I was chosen as the programmer type, and I was sent off for 3 years training in Edinburgh. It was a bit like university in that, we were in this special building in Edinburgh where they trained us up on bits and bytes and assembly code and computers and tapes and the rest of it, and had us writing mass storage access systems and stuff like that. So that was quite good. So in a sense, I kind of had 3 years of university in Edinburgh, but it was grace of Johnny Walker's, and I came back to Walker's and worked in the IT department along with yourself, and thankfully.
And after that, you moved about the world a wee bit, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I kind of get itchy feet in Walker's after 11 years there. So I was looking at all the adverts in the IT press and seeing all these big salaries. So I thought, well, maybe I could advance my station in life, because by that time, Isobel and I had got hooked up. I finally proposed to her after 7 years. And
it was a long engagement, Douglas. But it was okay. We still enjoyed the engagement.
Yeah. we did okay. We bought this flat up at Bonneton Road in Kilmarnock, which was handy for going along the Western Bypass down to Walkers. But anyway, I got itchy feet and applied for a few jobs. No, I applied for one job, in fact, and I got an interview. And it was with K Shoes down in Kendal. And I got the job as a systems analyst programmer, and went down there, and unfortunately after about 6 months they were in a wee bit of dire straits, K Shoes, and they had a redundancy list of people who were made redundant, and I thought, well, last in first out, and I started looking about for another job, and phoned up a colleague in Distillers, Jimmy, who was running the Distillers programming department in Edinburgh. Can't remember his second name right now. Do you remember it, Douglas?
No.
Anyway, I said, any jobs going? He says, oh, definitely. What are you looking for? I said, well, looking to move back up. So I moved to Edinburgh. In fact, I didn't have to move to Edinburgh because I wasn't on the redundancy list. I was developing this system that was going to save them a lot of money, so I guess that's why they were intent in keeping me on. But anyway, I thought I'd get out before things get any worse, and I moved to work for Distillers in Edinburgh, and I was there for about 5 years, and during that time we moved back up from, we lived in a place called Sedgwick in the Lake District. We moved up from Sedgwick to Linlithgow, and we really liked Linlithgow. It was a lovely wee town, and we had this bungalow with a big picture window that had a beautiful view over the loch and the palace, so it was superb.
But what happened was, when we were in Sedgwick, was we actually found our next passion, which was we bought a boat instead. And we neither of us had really sailed boats.
Well, I'd been canoeing,
but not boats. And we took the boat with us from Sedgwick up to Linlithgow.
Yeah.
And the Linlithgow Loch was where we both began to sail.
Yeah, dinghy sailing, yeah. So,
And you ended up further afield. You ended up in France for a while.
we did.
Yeah.
In Linlithgow, the guy across the road, just to continue the sailing, but the guy across the road, Norrie Martin, he had a wee keel boat which he kept at South Queensferry, and he used to take me out in that, and I thought, oh, this is quite nice as well. It's a wee bit more stable than a dinghy, because I ended up in the water one Frostbite series, and all I was wearing was a couple of pair of my wife's tights instead of a wetsuit, and I was hypothermic by the time they got me out of the water. Yeah, from Linlithgow and Distillers, it was pretty much the same as Johnny Walker. It was a bit the same because I was back into the payroll team and in the payroll team, which I'd been doing a bit of it at Walker's. So Norrie across the road, he worked for a company called Digital Equipment Corporation, a big American corporation that was on the up at the time, and he was raving about it, saying it was a great company. So they were actually doing hiring for their European programming team, and I went along to the interviews and got offered a job. Actually, it was quite funny because I was in for a sort of project manager's job or project leader. I had to be interviewed by the equivalent people over in Geneva. So they flew me to Geneva for some interviews, and me being a wee bit innocent country bumpkin, got there with not too much money in my back pocket, you know, and I was just in for the day, some interviews, and then flying back out. And the head honcho in Geneva, Ken Leckenby, he was the head of IT for Europe. He interviewed me, and he was quite a nice guy, Englishman. And at the end of the interview, I says, Ken, you couldn't lend me 50 quid. What, can you not pay for the taxi? I says, well, I've already paid for a taxi, but on the way here, I says, can we go via somewhere where I can see Mont Blanc? Next to Mont Blanc. So this taxi driver, he was going all the way around Geneva and into the country, and after about 20 minutes, I says, wait a minute, where are we going? He says, Mont Blanc. I said, no, I don't want to go in Mont Blanc. I just want a place where I can see it. So by this time, I was going to be late for the interview. So I says, look, I've got an interview at such and such a time. I need to get back there to the digital headquarters. So he broke every law in Switzerland getting back there. You know, made it, sweat dripping down my forehead, goes into these interviews and went through the interviews. So at the end of the interview with Ken Leckenby, I said, Ken, can you lend me 50 quid? He says, what, have you not got enough money for the taxi? I says, no, that's not it, Ken. I says, I've no money for duty free.
Very good. Well, let's before we pass on to Jim to ask you a bit about burn stuff, maybe you just want to give the family a mention, because eventually you ended up back at Prestwick with digital equipment, if I remember rightly.
Yeah. And by that time, we had two girls. We had Janet and Helen. Tom went away to America for 6 months. I don't know if it was training you were in. What was he doing?
No, it was. Digital was investing in this new technology called artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm. Or expert systems, as they called it, and they took some of us over to get involved with the team that was working on it. And a couple of systems they had were for a sales analysis tool, because what digital specialised in was in making computers that were specific to the customer, so the customer could ask for whatever they wanted in the computer, and the configuration task was getting more and more complex, that they started employing these expert systems. XCon, which was a configurator which was employed in the manufacturing sites like Air, and they had teams of 20 people just doing configurations the whole time to see if they could make this machine for the customer and whether all the parts would work together. And so they came up with this XCon configurator tool, and there was another one for the salespeople, which was based on XCon, but the salespeople needed a bit more high level. Does this work with that and stuff? And then it was passed back to XCon for a more detailed analysis. So, yeah. So I spent 6 months in the States, and then when I come back,
well, I phoned him up in the States. What happened was that the girls and I, we decided to stay here. We could have gone to the States, but we decided to stay here for the kids' education. And we went over at the October holiday, and we took 2 weeks instead of 1 week. And we went over for the October holiday for 2 weeks. And then in the end of November, beginning of December, middle of December, Tom was due to come back the end of December.
you're not going to tell the whole story. You're not going to tell
No.
Chimichango.
No. And at the middle of December, I had to make a phone call to him and say, "You'll never guess what I'm expecting."
I says, whose is it?
And he went, "What?" He said, "How can that be?" I said, well, how do you think?
I can tell you exactly. One of the evenings when she was over living with me, I had a flat in the States, and her and the 2 kids come over, and we had a holiday together. And one of the weeks I was working, but I took a week off, and we went up New Hampshire and had a view around that area of New England. But one of the nights we decided that we would get a babysitter in, Professor Paul Nolan from Galway University. He was doing a similar thing to me. Digital invited professors of IT to come and study at their IT facility in Massachusetts. And Paul was a good friend because he was Irish, and the Celts always gathered together. So I asked him if he would babysit. So no problem. So he was quite an affable guy, and the girls they knew him, they'd seen him a couple of times before. So he babysat, and we went out, and we went to Chimichango's, a Mexican restaurant, which was just across the freeway, which was a dual carriageway just outside my flat. And we skipped across the freeway, we jaywalked and crossed the barrier in the middle and got to Chimichango's, and we went in, and the girl said, "Would you like a drink before your meal?" Oh yes, Isabel's face lit up. Yeah, what would you like? Would you like a margarita? She's looking through the menu of drinks. It's about 5 pages long. So I said, "Yeah, margarita's quite nice."
Well,
I'll have a margarita.
I've never seen a margarita that size before, but
So she had 2 of these margaritas.
and then I had a pina colada.
Yeah, we were asked to go to our table, so we went to our table and we ordered drinks at our table, and she came with this pineapple-sized pina colada. So then the menu came, and it's like, I couldn't believe menus in the States. They're worse than Chinese menus
We
here.
were
They just
quite
get
young.
so much.
We were only in our mid-30s.
She couldn't choose, apart from the fact that by this time she was well in her tops. And she could hardly read the menu. And she looked at the front page, and there's this picture of an enchilada.
I just looked at the photographs, really, because
Read the wee print by that time. Anyway, there was this £1 enchilada, and she ordered that. So this thing came, it was like a salmon hanging off her plate, It was £1 of ground beef in a wrap, and all the accoutrements. So she finished about a third of it, and the girl at the end came up and she says, "Are you finished, ma'am? You want me to box it?" And Isobel hadn't a clue what she said. I says, "Yes, please," So she took it away, and just as we're leaving, she came with this cake box with a wee pink ribbon all tied in a bow, and she put it down in front of Isobel. And Isobel says, "What's that?" I says, "Oh, they always give you a present when you go in Chimichango, We made it back to the flat without opening the box, and she was dying to open this box, so she opened the box and there was her 2/3 enchilada sitting in this box.
A
I said,
good, pre-
I
wasn't it a
said,
good present,
I
Douglas.
said, don't worry about that. That's going in the freezer. I'll have it tomorrow night for my tea.
He had, I think he had it, you know, when we went, you know, for the rest of the week. I think just about there was that much meat in it.
Sorry.
And as a result of that experience at the Mexican restaurant,
Yeah.
so you're telling us that's when Robert arrived.
Yeah, that's when Robert arrived, Douglas. In fact, there's 2 times I was pregnant. I was pregnant when we went to down to Sedgwick, and I was pregnant again when we were moving to France. And I decided that I wasn't going to move to France being pregnant. I didn't want to have Robert in France, so I decided to wait a bit longer and move after Robert was 6 weeks old when we moved to France.
Very good.
Moved to France.
Right.
A job with digital. I joined. They set up a European AI group, and I went down to join them there at their Centre Technique in Valbonne. There's a big industrial park, technical industrial park, where IBM and Hewlett Packard and people like that were setting up places.
Very good. Well, we'll maybe get you away from talking about yourselves and see if we can talk about your life with Robert Burns. And I'll pass over to Jim to get you started on that.
Thanks very much, Douglas. It's an easy question. How did you get started with Burns?
Well, if I can start first, if that's okay. I've been involved with Burns since I was a wee tot, because my granny played the piano. She played Burns music, and everybody in my house sang Burns. In fact, my father was a really proud Ayrshire man, and Burns for him was the be all and end all. And so he was quite used to, if you went a walk, he would quote Burns just naturally, wasn't he? You know, and he would say, "To a mountain daisy," or you know, "To a mouse," or something like that, you know, or "A man's a man," for all that was really important to him. So I think, as you know, coming from Ayrshire, quite often that's what happens. You've got a Burns book, and you've also got a Bible in your house. And these 2 books were very important in the house. So that's where I come from. And Tom is very similar in a way, because there was a Burns book in his
See, typical
house.
wife talking for me. My introduction to Burns was basically when my grandfather Tom died. He was a lace weaver and a pigeon fancier, and he left. He didn't own much. In fact, he was pretty poor. But he did leave me a Kilmarnock edition of Burns. It's not the first edition, unfortunately, but it's a Kilmarnock edition. And I got that when he died in 1960, 1958, when I was 10. But I really never opened it from then until probably late 60s, when we started getting into folk singing, and we opened it up, and we found some of his songs, and we started singing the songs at the folk clubs. So that was basically my introduction to Burns. And we never got Burns at school back then. We didn't even get to recite "To a Mouse" or anything like that you hear about nowadays. It was just not done at New Mills anyway. I don't know about other schools. And certainly Kilmarnock Academy stayed away from Burns, and they tried to make you talk posh.
Yeah. Although one of my first memories at school, primary school, was I think I was in primary 3, and the teacher had asked somebody if they could recite any Burns or sing any Burns song, and I was taught to sing "The Red, Red Rose,"
My love is
Oh, my
like
love is like a red, red rose. And I could sing it from a very early age. So I sang this. So to the teacher and the whole class. And what happened then was I got a very good surprise after that because I was sent round every single class to sing it. And that was pretty scary when you were only maybe 6 or 7 and you were going to the upper primary classes. So yeah, and so that's one of my first memories of doing something with Burns.
So I take it from that then that your introduction to Burns as a couple would be through music.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As we said, we started singing in Covenanters Folk Club, and our first Burns engagement was through my Uncle Jimmy, who used to take a drink in the Covenanters, so I think he might have heard us sing there. And he was in the New Mills Burns Club, and he invited us to go along to one of their Burns suppers and give them a few Burns numbers. And in fact, that's where we were introduced to Willie Morrison, because as part of the act, Willie recited Damashanta, and I nearly jumped out of my seat when he went, "The thunder roared, the lightning flashed," typical Willie, and I thought, oh, maybe there is something in this Burns. So I think that night I went home and actually opened my Burns book again, my Kilmarnock edition, and read through Damashanta just to hear it again. So that was our first Burns gig, if you like.
Yeah, and we've been doing gigs at Burns suppers for countless number of years, I think.
40 years, yeah.
Various different places, I have to say, in France as well.
Yeah. That's where I did my first Immortal Memory in France. And they were looking for somebody to do an Immortal Memory to Robert Burns. So this was through mainly digital people, but some other local Scots people and Irish people came along to the Burns supper. And so I was allowed to do an Immortal Memory, as well as sing with Isobel after it as well.
The probability is, I mean, I've heard you both speaking, but the probability is you're probably better known for your singing. And I'm sitting here thinking there's no point in having a vlog or a podcast with you saying to folk, well, have you got your musical instruments handy?
We have, actually.
Well, a tune for the folk listening would be entertaining, I'm thinking.
It would be great. We've got a few things that we've pulled out, but
Right, this is my favourite Burns song of all time. In fact, this is the song that got me started along giving talks about Burns' Scots musical heritage. I worked up this hour-long talk on Burns' musical heritage after Kirsten McHugh came to our club and gave a presentation, and she mentioned that she was working on a course for one of these MOOCs, mass online courses, for Glasgow University, and she was using the Lee-rig as the focus for part of her teaching. And I said, oh, that's great, because I had volunteered to talk about an aspect of Burns at the next monthly meeting. And I says, if you could send me some slides, if you've got any, on the Lee-rig, I'll make the Lee-rig my piece for the talk. But as it turns out, there's not much to say about the Lee-rig, other than Burns sent 2 verses to Johnson, and then later added a 3rd verse, and it's a simple wee pastoral song, but I really love the music that has been put to it. I don't know if Burns intended it to this music, but certainly that's how I learnt it. So we're going to do the Lee-rig first of all. When o'er the hill the evening star tells Barton time is near, my Joe and I'll sing frae the furrowed field. my Joe. I'll meet thee on the Leary, my ain kind dearie, oh. At midnight out in Marcus Glen, I rove and ne'er be weary, oh. If through that glen I gaed to thee, my ain kind dearie, oh. Although the night were ne'er sae wild, and I were ne'er sae weary, oh, I'll meet thee on the Leary, my ain kind dearie, oh. The hunter lose the morning sun, they rouse the mountain deer, my Joe. At noon the fisher tags the glen, adoon the barn to steer, my Joe. Give me the earth, oh gloaming grey, it makes my head say cheery, oh, to meet thee on the Leary, my ain kind dearie, oh.
Well done.
That was beautiful.
It was what?
That was beautiful.
What you said, basical.
Very good.
This is a song called Contented with Little and Canty with Mair. And you've probably heard me singing it before, Douglas.
Yeah.
We really liked the poem, and Tom and I, and we decided to put it to some music.
It's supposed to be to a jig music, lumps of pudding, but we didn't like it to that music, and we found this Irish air which we thought went with it better in terms of the content and the poignancy of the actual poem itself.
Contented with little and canty with mair, whene'er I forgather with sorrow and care, I'll give them a scalp as they're creeping along, with a cock o' swats and an old Scottish sang. I whiles claw the elbow o' troublesome thought, but man is a soldier and life is a fought. My mirth and good humour are coin in my pouch, and my freedom's my lordship, nae monarch dare touch. A tumult o' trouble should not be my foe, a nicht o' good fellowship soothers it all. When at the blithe end of our journey at last, what the dealer ever thinks o' the road he has passed, for contented with little and
Canty with men,
whene'er I forgather with sorrow and care, I'll give them a scalp as they're creeping along. We are cocked swords and a no Scottish sand.
Well done again.
That tune works well. It sounded great.
yeah.
Good. Do you want another one? One
Nah.
more?
If you give us another one, and then we'll wind down to a finish after the other one. So that, because I think given that we've got two of you at the one time, we can extend our time a wee bit. So that'll let us keep most of the material in.
Well, it gets me to bring in my ukulele, right?
Perfect.
Wait a minute. Right, okay. Right. This is one of probably the first song we sang at a burnt supper. And it's called Lazy Lindsay, right?
Oh, lovely.
Good.
Sung it because it was it's a song where it's an answer, two-part song. Will ye gang to the Highlands, Lazy Lindsay? Will ye gang to the Highlands with me? Will ye gang to the Highlands, Lazy Lindsay? My bride and my darling Tabby, take gang to the Highlands with you, sir. I dinna ken how that may be, for I ken not the land that you live in, nor ken I the lad I'm going with.
Oh, lazy lads, ye man get nothing. If you say that you dinna ken me, for my name it is Ronald MacDonald, a chieftain o' high grief.
She has kilted her up with green satin. She has kilted her up to the knee, and she's safe with Lord Ronald MacDonald, his bride and his darling Tabby. Will ye gang to the Highlands, Lazy Lindsay? Will ye gang to the Highlands with me? Will ye gang to the Highlands, Lazy Lindsay? My bride and my darling Tabby.
That was lovely. I've loved that song ever since the first Burn Supper organised at Diageo, and one of the technical guys, I think his name was Jim, and I've forgotten his second name. One of our technical guys volunteered to provide a bit of music, and we didn't even know that he played an instrument. And at that time, I didn't know that Lazy Lindsay had anything other than one verse in it. So it was lovely to hear it. It was tremendous. Thank you very much. Jim, anything you want to ask Tom and Isobel before we finish off?
But I think it would be inappropriate if we finish without asking them to tell us just what's happening in Prestwick Burns Club at the moment. It's a Burns Club very close to my heart, as you're both aware of. I've been a guest there regularly, and I was a massive fan of your former secretary, who's unfortunately not with us anymore.
Yeah, that's
You lump my thought thinking of Jim Coots, I've got to say. So what's happening down at Prestwick at the moment?
Well, essentially nothing, Jim. Unfortunately, since March, we had our usual at Hame night in January, and then we had Murray Pittock along in February, and we had Rab Wilson along in March, and that was in early March, obviously. And since the lockdown, we've basically been doing nothing, and Mrs. here is still president, so she's not a past president.
Maybe that we might, well, the way things were going, we thought we'd maybe get started again in September, but there's no way.
Yeah.
So we're kind of thinking of Zoom, but it's very difficult because we have quite a lot of old members who are maybe not as good at using computers as we are. So I wouldn't say we're spring chickens. So, but
At least we have some IT background.
Yeah.
So
I noticed that you've lined up Rab and Margaret to maybe come down and do a bit of singing for you.
Well, I'm hoping so. After that rendition, that was superb by the pair of them. And I'd never heard it before, but I didn't realise he was a good singer as well as could talk the hind legs off a donkey, you know.
For the folks out there, we're talking about Rab Wilson and Margaret, who do a song called Halloween, which is absolutely beautiful.
Superb. I came along and talked to us about his
new
Broadbrick Cosmos book.
Yeah.
Jim, as
was
you
brilliant.
said, we're missing Jimmy Coots. I'm acting sector at the moment. I didn't really want to jump in and take over from where Jim left off. I've been doing my best since Jimmy died in 2018. Like a lot of the clubs, we have got a dwindling membership. When I joined the club, it was male only, but with the numbers continuing to dwindle back then, a few of us decided that we'd open it up to lady members as well to try and boost the numbers. And to a great extent it has, because at the last two meetings, I think ladies were in the majority. So they've kept the club going. Otherwise, I think it would have folded, Jim. We certainly have done well at our burn suppers. Our burn suppers have been well populated. We've had about 50, and that's about as much as that room can take, as you probably know. And with folk like you speaking for over an hour, you know, they're dying to get out of the place, you know.
I'm guilty of many things, but speaking for an hour's no one of them.
John Young did that night, the two you were there, remember?
John Young is one of my heroes, as you're aware. I just love John Young to death. He's just a wonderful, wonderful human being.
The lassies, an hour and 10 minutes. That's how long he took that night.
I know, I was doing the memory and I'm saying to myself, John, but I mean, to be fair, he captivates an audience.
Aye.
He does.
And he did it just to outdo you, pal. He did
Aye.
it longer than you.
It was a good
Okay. Okay, so I think we're going to be guilty of overrunning our time as well. So I'm sure we could do another episode, Tom and Isobel, because this has been tremendous. And I think maybe later on in the year we might come back to you. So all it leaves for me to say is thanks very much for giving up your time and telling us about your life with Robert Burns. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Very welcome. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you very much for inviting us.